two questions really. How do Mark and Peter feel now they are not just photographers but also master printmakers, as is something that they weren't before? And secondly, I'm quite interested about this idea you have of digital files degrading, and I just don't understand how you think this is going to happen. Digital technology evolves and improves, and it's always backwards compatible. Why do you believe that anything can become unreadable in the future?
I think if we think about floppy disks now, I don't know. Oh, sorry. If we think about floppy disks now, I don't know if anybody has. I'm sorry?
You can still plug in a floppy disk and use it.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, it's probably a very interesting point, but it still seems, I haven't seen a floppy disk for a very long time. and I've just learned something. I mean, I didn't realise that you could still read a floppy disk, but it still seems theoretically possible. I mean, you know, we're talking 50, 100 years. That's a hell of a long time. Technology is accelerating. The rate of change is phenomenal. In just the last couple of years, you can just see how things are going to extrapolate forwards. And therefore, the idea that we could have a physical print in our hands, well, possibly that's been kept carefully in you know, dark storage or whatever in a you know, safe place, but in hundreds of years, which could still look absolutely exquisite and representative of the photographer's intentions, without the interface of technology and electricity. For all we know, that we might reach a point where there is no electricity, but we still might want to look at some prints. Thinking obviously of fairly apocalyptic scenarios.
I like optimists.
Essentially, I am an optimist, but I also find myself inevitably, I'm both excited and, to be honest with you, slightly terrified when I think about the future. And I do think about the future quite a lot, probably more than is healthy. And because I'm extremely interested in science and technology, I suppose this kind of feeds into, you know, my imagination. Sorry, what was the other question?
Master printer. But you've been a master printer for years, so let's ask Mark that.
Oh, that's very sweet of you, Connor. I wouldn't be that confident about my abilities, but I mean, yeah, I think we all have to, you know, we all have to master our tools. I think if we want to get to that point where we are satisfied, I know we're not all the same photographers, but you know, I think the three of us is very clear from what you saw on the screen. We are fairly obsessional characters about, you know, the look of the final thing. So I think, and I think that control that I now have, we all have, it reminds me a little bit of the good old days when we used to, I did have a little studio, a little dark room, and I used to spend 8 hours in making black and white prints. I think, you know, digital technology is about knowing when to stop as well. But that's the problem with Photoshop, is you can go on and on and on and on. And I think, you know, it's having an idea in your head of what you want, rather like, that's exactly the same as when we used to go into dark rooms. What do we want to achieve? And we stop and get there.
Okay, I think, can we have just maybe one more question, then we have to take a break. Sorry, who's it? Okay.
Peter, I'm interested in that shift you had from analogue to digital. What I'm interested in is the immediacy of digital. Because I think photography is all about editing. And in fact, we have a raw file as well. Quick mask, pen tool, like we chat down in the middle of the
Mark?
No,
Oh, right, yeah.
It's of no importance. I mean, this idea of the print, we don't know about it. We're living in a digital revolution where we can reproduce that maybe 50 years down the line, and we can manipulate the print through quick mask, the pen tool, saturation, and so it's unimportant because we are going to have these images in the future because of the digital revolution. But could I ask you a question? Your work is of a still life nature. Do you tether your back, do you edit at source or do you edit back in your bedroom?
Well, one thing I can say is that I don't tether the camera for sure, and I move about the world with the sort of ease that you can with a 35mm size camera, which is one of the advantages of one of these new digital cameras. It's the smaller type that I use, because of course you can't get much bigger ones. But in a sense, I'm still putting myself out into the world, trying to take advantage of opportunities which come my way and trying to stay alert. I'm not even looking for anything in particular. That's not the way I work. I'm wandering through the world, or perhaps, drawing on intuition and experience to try and put myself in a particular part of the world, to hopefully benefit from good fortune by being presented with a particular combination of circumstances. And on a good day, if I get lucky, I might have the wit to recognize that the moment has arrived and make a photograph. And then, but I will only be making, one or two from, the same angle. I'm not kind of like going all the way around shooting just because it does have a motor drive switch. But I will possibly put it onto motor drive for one particular reason and do about 3 or 4 frames. And that's when the shutter speed gets down quite low in low light. And one of the great things about a digital camera with a motor drive is you can take, say, 3 or 4 frames in quick succession if you're shooting at, say, an 1/8 or 15th of a second, and choose the sharpest one. So that'll be the main difference. But in many respects, I'm still trying to take advantage of serendipity and those extraordinary moments when you see something for the first time, its significance, its magnificence, and you are lucky enough perhaps to have the camera with you to make a photograph. And then I do love spending time with the computer. I really, really love my computer. Now it may sound particularly sad, but I think I've tried to give some sort of insight into my technological and my technical background and science at school and so on, which I think in some ways it must have helped to clear a path, perhaps, for me to be really comfortable with computers. And it feels incredibly comfortable editing photographs on the computer. But one thing I will add to what we were talking about earlier, which has kind of shocked me, this whole issue of like making prints, traditional prints or digital prints. In my old darkroom in the studio, I used to be able to get out, say if I worked hard for a day, maybe somewhere between 6 and 8 exhibition grade prints, this sort of size. But what I've discovered with these digital prints and my computer at home, my printer at home, is if I'm lucky, I get 2 out a day. And that's not what I expected to happen. I thought the digital prints would just pour out. But in fact, that's the way it is. I'm just telling you the truth. It's taking a lot longer to make the new prints, even though there are certain aspects of the process which are obviously immeasurably faster.
Can I just add something?
Sure.
We can't tell, of course, if files will be readable in 50 or 100 years' time. This is speculation, but we still have the issue of the vintage print here. And I think if you imagine going out and making a picture in the morning and making a print in the evening, and it's going to be very different from something that one might make 50 years later with newer, better technology. It's closer to the photographer's intention. And I think that's, if you're a print collector, the vintage print is always more valuable than the one made 30 years later, which may be technically better, maybe a much nicer thing to look at, but it's not close to the time when the original negative was made.
Yeah.
So I think we're still in the same place.
It's funny because a vintage colour print from the 70s is a poison chalice, because it's on the cusp of disappearing.
Yeah.
And yet people do pay a lot of money. I mean, we've seen Stephen Shaw's up on the walls of galleries where they're just virtually disappearing.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you everyone. We're going to have a short break now, 20 minutes, and we'll be coming back then hearing the other side of the table, so to speak, from the dealers and the museum. Thank you.